on News Talk ZB today, New Zealand Work Research Institute director argues there's evidence sexism may be lowering teacher pay. I'd like to see the evidence. That's what I'd like to see. Certainly there is a case for investigating whether sexism is lowering teachers' pay. The Ministry of Education is looking into whether teachers are paid badly because of gender, a claim made by the Post-Primary Teachers Association and the Educational Institute. The majority of teachers are women, with a base pay scale ranging from $51,000 to $90,000 annually. New Zealand Work Research Institute's Associate Director Catherine Ravenswood said decades of research have shown female-dominated occupations are paid less, partly because of how we view women's work, but also because of gender discrimination, where we just pay women less. It's the pay gap, the gender pay gap, is a fascinating conversation. We're not going to get into it today. I'd like to see the research. Maybe we will revisit that another night. So the question I asked you guys tonight on Twitter, and we've had 50 votes or so in there, is, in your opinion, what would be a fair salary to pay a senior teacher with no management responsibilities? Someone in the chat said, how many percentage of teachers are senior teachers? I don't know the answer to that question, but when I say senior teacher, that basically means getting to the top of your pay scale. And that just comes with time, right? You get a pay jump each year and you get to the top of it, and then you are the top. It's not about anything else, right? So don't think about when I said senior teacher as in a senior responsibility. It's to the top of the pay scale. And it's interesting that 3/4 of the people that responded said between $70,000 and $90,000. $90,000 at 50%, $17,000 at $80,000, $90,000, 50%, $80,000, $70,000 about 8%, and 25% of people, 1 in 4, said $100K, $100,000 plus. So here is actually what teachers earn. This is primary. Now, actually, I'll just show you, because actually primary and secondary are exactly the same. Like, they're exactly the same, the pay scale. So I'll just show you one of them. So the starting salary, if you've got a diploma of teaching, right? So that's no degree, no nothing, just diploma of teaching, is $51,000, right? And the maximum salary you can earn is $85,500. And then you go through various, other iterations. And basically you get to the top, whereas if you've got your master's or a PhD, the most you can earn as a teacher is $90,000. Now, remember, that's not a principal. That's not the most as a DP. That's not the most as a teacher in charge of English. That's, when I say just, not meaning to minimize, that is just a classroom teacher with no other responsibilities. What does that mean? Because see, what we're hearing at the moment is teachers don't get paid enough. And my question is, as someone who's, and look, this is not, as I was going to say, in my head that sounded bitter before it came out. Someone living off the bones of their ass, $90,000 sounds quite good to me. But in general, that's not, I'm not in a profession with a degree and, qualifications and looking after 100 school kids. It's not the same thing. But we do need to ask the question, if teachers are saying we're not getting paid enough, how much are they getting paid? And when we find out, does that change the conversation at all? Likely not. According to 3/4 of you guys, right, anywhere between $70,000 and $90,000 seems fair to you. And the maximum that teachers can earn is $90,000. So that's in that ballpark. What it does say for a lot of people, though, I think the starting salary at the beginning teacher is way too low. Now, I wonder if that's the conversation to be had here as well. Is it that teachers aren't paid enough, or is it that beginning teachers early on aren't paid enough? Like, what do you think of a $90,000 salary, Chewy, for being a teacher? Like, just in general, is it far too little, or does it feel like an okay salary, or what?
The money sounds okay to me, but the question is, what's the expected workload with that?
Yep.
It's very easy to think of teaching being a 9 to 5 job, but we very definitely know that that's not the case.
Yep. It's 9 till 3, Chewy. It's even better. I'm kidding.
and as I say to my teacher friends, and you get all of those holidays.
Yeah.
And then I start ducking chairs and stuff. Look, my understanding, talking to a friend of mine that left the teaching profession, and from talking to someone who is a teacher currently at the moment, is those first 5 years can be absolutely brutal.
Yep.
And the both of them told me exactly the same thing. So the guy that I know that was in teaching and left, he was there for less than 5 years. And the one that is still there, the figure that she gave me was that 50% of teachers that go in are gone in 5 years.
Yeah.
So I'd say it probably is a money issue at that level, that entry level point. And then when we get up to sort of 90 to 100K, is the question that the workload's wrong. Do we have enough teachers? Are they trying to do too much with too little? Because it's always the argument when you're talking about strike is pay and conditions.
Yep.
So if you can't improve one, can you improve the other? If there were more teachers that lasted out of those 5 years and continued on with that career, would the guys that are further on in their career have an easier time of it and go, yeah, this is a fair compensation for my time and effort?
Yep. And look, other thing,
I think that also the levels of political interference with their jobs, the expectations that we have for teachers and what they do with their kids, the levels of parental interference into their job now is also much higher. Like the satisfaction must be out the door. So yeah, again, it's pay and conditions.
So let's look into that as well. And I actually think one of the things is, and I'm looking at the starting salary up here, right? And look, we love the people who work in a supermarket. We need them who work in a supermarket or in a petrol station or like an entry level job. You can walk straight out of school, all right? 17 years old, no qualifications, no nothing, and be on about $46,000. It's about what minimum wage is, $47,000. Mm. Or you can go to teachers training college and university for 3 years, possibly come out with $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of debt and earn, $100 more a week before tax than them. That seems wrong to me. So yep. I wonder, and I think I've done these numbers before, I could go and find them perhaps, but I haven't. In Australia, the difference is the top end is not that different for a lot of teachers in some of the states, but the bottom end starts a lot higher. So like rather than, let's say 50 to 90, it might be more like 75 to 110. And a 25-year-old starting on 75 is very different than a 25-year-old starting on 50. And let me also tell you something else. I trained as a teacher, but remember, the very best thing that ever happened to the teaching education system in New Zealand was me leaving teaching. But it means I had lots of friends, and I was intermediate school and primary school, lots of friends who stayed in it. The first 5 years are brutal, but after that, it gets a lot easier because what happens in teaching, not to kind of burst the bubble here, is in those first 5 years, you're developing all these resources, you're teaching all these new things, but then you start reusing them. And the job becomes a bit easier. The planning becomes a bit easier. The workload doesn't on the other end, but the front end of teaching becomes a bit easier because you haven't done all that, have to do all that same work again. You've got a unit plan that you're going to use every second year for myths and legends or whatever it is, and it gets filed away and you bring it out and you use it again. Now, I'm not saying that to demean what's going on, right? But that's a reality of, especially within that primary school sector, of what happens. I think the same could be said for secondary school. We all know about our high school English teachers teaching the same book every year. One flew over the cuckoo's nest, whatever it is. It's so I'm not saying this to demean it, but that also comes into the conditions, Chewy, is that there's always a lot of work, there's always a lot of that, but it also, as you get more experienced, it gets easier because you're more experienced, like every job does, but it also gets less time consuming because you start to be able to utilize and use things that you've done last year again this year. So you get paid better and your job gets easier, which is probably why, as you said, that 5-year threshold is such an absolute bastard to kind of get through. I wanted to show this as well to bring a context to this whole conversation that teachers aren't paid enough. And look, when I say that out loud, it kind of almost sounds like I'm saying they are. I'm not. I'm just looking at this hopefully objectively. And one of the ways to look at that objectively is to look at what salaries are like for other jobs around New Zealand. This is based on, this is a website called New Zealand Shores, and this is some numbers from 2022, arguably. An accountant or accounting makes 82 grand. These are averages according to Trade Me. Agriculture, 60. Architecture, 81. Automotive, 65. Banking, finance and insurance, 85. Construction, 72. Customer service, 53. Education, 62. So I guess that's the mid-range maybe of teaching, like between those new entrants or the beginning teachers and not. Engineering, 80. So you can see that not many, according to last year, are that much more than 90. IT, 124. Executive and general management, 116. So when you look at the scale of what could be earned, not necessarily the average, 90 grand seems to be upper middle of what the salaries certainly that are being listed from 2022, according to Trade Me, are as well. So just to bring context to the money thing as well, we need to have a look at what other industries and people earn, and as people have mentioned in the chat, also what other benefits they do get from it as well. And I agree, Chewy, it's not a 9 to 3 job. There's a lot of work, but there are also a lot of benefits when it comes to, Christmas holidays and that kind of stuff as well. Certainly more holidays than most people get. Again, not a criticism, just an observation. Yes, every teacher works through their term holidays, but then they also have good long holidays at the end of the year. not a criticism, not meaning so therefore you're getting enough, just a real observation. So when we line up all of those things we've just talked about now, and then ask the question, are teachers getting paid enough? What's the answer?
Look, I'm going to put up a piece of info that David in the chat put up. Average teaching salary is $84,658 per year. Entry-level positions start at $74,000, while most experienced workers make up almost $121,000 per year. And I guess the reason I'm mentioning this, we talked earlier about nurses and retaining them in New Zealand when they can get much better pay rates overseas, and I'd say teaching here is another example. Is the argument that wages in New Zealand in general are too low? Like, I mean, we looked at that list of jobs there.
Yep.
You know, I do not do an important job. I sell cell phones, and I'm around 65,000 a year.
Right.
And I sit in a stall and I help people remember their Facebook logins. So in the scheme of public good, you know, am I fairly compensated? A teacher has, yeah. How do you put a price on a job that has such an important role in society and has no profit margin?
Well, there's one other question to ask as well, Chewy, right? And this is, we have to be careful if we were in, like, when you take over the country, Chewy, and you become our benevolent dictator, you'll have to be careful with this question.
I can't nationalize the schools. It's already been done.
Why do people teach? Now, I would suspect they teach for the love of the job and the love of the kids.
So we don't need to pay them at all.
Well, this is why you have to be careful, because I'm not making that argument. But the driving factor, I don't think, is salary. So therefore, we have to figure out what is a fair and equitable salary to keep them in the job that they love. And
that's a fair statement.
I don't know whether $90,000 is too low or too high. I mean, I'm sure most people out there would probably like $90,000 a year. Again, please don't get me twisted. I'm not saying, they're fine. I'm just saying, let's be real about the conversation. You know, when I was growing up, I had an uncle and aunt who were both teachers. He was a principal. She was a Scale A teacher. Obviously, this was in the 80s or 90s, so I don't know what they were earning then. But they'd be on the equivalent of that household of probably $200,000 today, because she'd be a Scale A senior teacher on 90 and he was a principal. You know, $200,000 for a household is pretty good money for two teachers. So when we say needs more money, what does that mean? I just want it contextualized, and then I can offer an opinion. The opinion I have right now is beginning teachers get paid way too little, but I don't think I'm quite at the point yet where saying senior teachers get paid too little. I don't think I'm there, because $90,000, it's not terrible, but I think $51,000, basically a smidge over minimum wage for someone with a degree and likely debt from university and looking after your kids, is far too fucking low. That would be okay. So there you go. I've just committed to a couple of statements. I don't know whether I'm on board with $90,000 is too much, but I am on board with 51 for a beginning teacher. Certainly is by a long way.
And I think there you're looking at solving a couple of flow-on issues as well, right? Because if those people stay, then that improves the lot for everybody.
Yeah.
You got more experienced teachers doing more of the heavy lifting.